watching Goal Line Extended presented by Lacrosse Flash.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Goal Line Extended. Today is Friday, April 23, and I'm your host, Ryan Hulsebos. Glad that you could join us as we look ahead to the PLL College Draft on Monday night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. That is this Monday night, April 26th. And we have a big show and guest list lined up and planned as we await Ben Rubio's first overall selection for the Atlas. Noah Lands will be joining me in a moment as we look ahead to this college draft. We're going to be looking at a few picks and a few teams in particular, especially early in the draft and the various routes that they could take as this draft unfolds. A very deep draft with a ton of talent, but a lot of talent already in the league headed to training camp. So not that many roster spots, let alone game spots available. So we'll see on Monday night which guys at least get that chance to head to training camp. Today, we'll discuss some hypotheticals as we get set for draft night. And Paul Carcaterra last night releasing his mock draft. We'll discuss that a little bit. And then after Noah, I will be joined by Chrome head coach Tim Soudan to discuss his team and his plan ahead of Monday's draft. And Archer's head coach Chris Bates will stop by after to do the same regarding his team. And then to wrap up today's show, Liam Kelly will join me to tee up this weekend in college lacrosse as the regular season approaches its end for the Big Ten. Their regular season ends this week, but teams in various conferences fighting for seeding to finish out the regular season. Liam Kelly will be with me later to discuss that. And then on Monday, we will be releasing our draft special. We'll be laying out our Lacrosse Flash mock draft and giving our final thoughts ahead of Ben Rubio's first overall selection. A big weekend as we look ahead to Monday night. Be sure to check out lacrosseflash.com for all the latest. A lot of content going up there over the weekend and ahead of Monday. Follow Goal Line Extended at GL Extended and Lacrosse Flash on Instagram and Twitter so you don't miss any of it. Noah, welcome back to GLE, getting set for this college draft. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk some lacrosse. It's been a long day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hey, we're looking ahead to Monday night. 32 players set to join the league over the draft 4 rounds. A ton of talent, not that many roster spots or game spots, so we will see how each head coach goes about adding depth to their roster come the middle and later parts of the draft. But the talent at the top is exceptional. And what we are going to focus most of our time on today, as we have over the last couple of shows, is focus on those guys up at the top. But before we get started, a very important piece of information that we learned about yesterday. Joe Keegan in his weekly newsletter said that Jared Bernhardt plans to play college football this fall. That was then followed by Paul Carcaterra's mock draft dropped yesterday, as I said before, which does not include Bernhardt through the first 2 rounds. So that got us all thinking, is Jared Bernhardt going to be available? What are his plans for this summer? And then Keegan's note on Bernhardt was then confirmed by a University of Maryland press release that said he would be pursuing football in the fall as opposed to the 2021 PLL season. So originally one of the top names on the board, his name was being thrown around even in the first overall pick conversation, as he is the likely Tewaaraton winner this season in college lacrosse. But with this news, it's always important to note that whatever team does draft him would hold his rights for 2 years. So if one of these head coaches is willing to wait for Bernhardt, similar to what the Archers plan to do with Pat Spencer ahead of the inaugural season in 2019, they would hold his playing rights. Regardless, I still think we see him drafted. The question is, how long do these head coaches wait?
Yeah, I mean, it could be like that old Western scene where everybody's just looking at each other, ready to draw their guns and see who's going to take the first pick, to steal him. I think he'll go – I don't think he's going to go the first 2 rounds. Those first 2 rounds are going to be reserved for that top-tier talent coming in this year, and it's going to address a lot of those teams' needs like right now. But I could definitely see a 3rd or 4th round pick, a team sneaking in mid-3rd round, trying to grab them before someone else does and make the other teams regret that they didn't do it earlier.
Bernhardt likely falling down draft boards as he won't be suiting up in the PLO in 2021, but I expect a head coach to take a shot at him like we saw Andy Towers do last year with Jeff T. Found out that he wouldn't be playing, or didn't find out, actually didn't even know what his situation would be, decided to take a chance. Obviously, we know what the situation is this time. He won't be playing this season, but expecting someone to take a shot at him. All right, let's take a look at this draft order. In round 1, the Atlas select first overall, followed by the Water Dogs in Chrome, Redwoods and Archers, Chaos, Whipsnakes, and then the Atlas will finish the round picking 8th overall. And that first overall pick, that's the one that we all have our eyes on. At one point, this was a 3-man race, it seemed, with Bernhardt in the mix. I think it's safe to say that he's no longer in that conversation anymore, as we said before. So it's between Sowers and Teat now. Sowers in the middle of his first and only season at Duke after transferring from Princeton, trying to help the Blue Devils win another NCAA championship. And Teat is yet to play this spring, as Cornell and the rest of the Ivy League not playing games this season. We know what each of these guys brings to the table, unique and dominant in their own respects. But if you're Coach Rubier, who are you taking here at number one?
I don't think it's any question you're still going to take Sowers. I know it's been kind of the buzz the last week or so. It's been some fun, times to talk about and see if you could maybe stir up some buzz with it. But, I think Michael Sowers has proven for too long that he is a perennial talent. And I really think this year at Duke is going to prepare him much better than another year at Princeton would have to play professional lacrosse, because he goes from being the guy and his gameplay suits, I'm the offense, I do everything, to playing a season with a Brennan O'Neill, with a Dyson Williams, with all these guys that are good shooters, that are good offensive players. And I think it's really going to prepare him for this Atlas offense where he's got gunslingers all around him. So I don't think they're going to pass on him. I know everybody likes to talk about it, but when you get a guy like that who has proven that he's going to be, probably by the time the season ends, a top 3 goal scorer or point scorer in NCAA history, you don't pass that guy at 1.
A lot of shooters here on this Atlas team. Just taking a look at a few of them. They got Chris Cloutier, Brian Cosby, Romar Dennis. So definitely expecting the Atlas to probably take Sowers here. Obviously, Teat also there. Rubier also has picks 8, 10, and 11 of this draft. So at the end of round 1 and at the top of round 2, he'll be able to add 3 more really talented players out of this pool in those 3 picks. With it looking like an attackman at 1, whether it is Sowers or Teat, what do we think Rubier does here with these 3 picks? There should be some polls available. Connors or Giles Harris might slip. Jack Keelty could be available. And I'd like to think that Rubier has his eyes on a midfielder or 2. We might see 1 or 2 taken before Rubier's pick at 8. But whether it's Ryan Terefenko, Trey LeClaire, Doc Sakin, Connor Kurtz, 2 of those guys should be available to Rubier, and I'd honestly expect at least 3 of them. But where do you think Rubier goes with these picks in the middle of the early parts of this draft?
Yeah, I think the first one's probably going to be a pull. He's going to try to grab one of those top 2 guys in Connors or Giles Harris. I feel like it's going to be Giles Harris just because he fits that Atlas mold so well. And so I think he goes with Giles Harris at 8, and then he could pick up someone, like you said, like a Cursed with that 10 and 11 pick. I think he's going to go with a shooter with at least one of them. You could see a Ryan Tierney sneak in and get picked up right here, Mac O'Keefe even if he slides. So I think you could see one of those guys. And then, like you said, if a Trey LeClaire is still there, I don't know that he's going to slide that far, but if they get lucky and something crazy happens, you could get a Trey LeClaire. So I think they're going to go heavy on offense with those back end 2 picks. I think they're going to try to pick up the shooter that can help offset a Sowers. Like we said, he's going to feed everyone. And so you've got those middle tier shooters are going to be right there with those 10 and 11 picks. So a Tierney, a Caraway from Georgetown, he could fit that mold too. So I think he's got so many options. It's really a crapshoot on which way he decides to go. I think he's going to talk with a lot of his guys that he's already got and see kind of what they feel about it. If there's going to be guys that fit well with the guys that are already established on the Atlas. So you could see some surprises there, but you're going to get one of those 5 guys probably.
The Atlas set to bring in 4 guys in the first 11 selections. Very important draft picks for Coach Rubier and his team heading into 2021 and beyond. Again, midfielders available. I would imagine being at 8, they don't have these 3 picks in a row. It's the Atlas, then the Cannons, and then the Atlas again at 10 and 11. So I would expect probably a poll taken at 8. We're thinking the Chrome maybe needing a poll as well. They're sitting at 9. So probably trying to make sure that you get your guy at 8. Chrome, hopefully not the Chrome. Hopefully the Cannons don't then take your guy at 9, but you do have 10 and 11. Selecting second in this draft is Coach Copeland in the Water Dogs. His only pick over the first 2 rounds. And like we said before, I think it's safe to say that we can expect this to be either Sowers or Teat, whichever one the Atlas don't draft essentially. So expecting one of those guys to slot in there at 2 to join the Water Dogs attack, which also welcomes Ryan Brown in 2021. We talked Coach Copeland on Tuesday's show. Make sure to go check that out if you haven't. But after the Water Dogs is where I think it gets interesting. The Chrome select 3rd overall. You'll all get to hear from Coach Soudan in a little bit. He'll be joining me when Noah and I are finished. But Chrome selects 3rd. and can do one of many things. Obviously, Sowers and Teague could be there depending on what those two teams we just talked about at the top do. But Soudan has a lot of other options. He could go grab a pole, Giles Harris, Jack Keelty, Jared Connors, as we mentioned before, headlining that group. Chrome also only has one face-off man going to this draft, so maybe we could see them take a TD Earl, and that's what Paul Carcaterra has them doing on his latest mock draft. But a guy named Ryan Tarafenko will also be available, and he checks a handful of boxes for you, backup face-off man being one of them. But I don't want to talk too much about it because we have Tim Soudan joining us here soon. But what do you think Soudan does here at 3 overall?
He could go so many different directions. Tarafenko is probably the one that covers most of the boxes. I mean, he can play defense well. Transition is a huge part of this game. He can play offense well, and he's a pretty serviceable face-off guy. And you've got a Connor Farrell who's going to be your starter for the third year straight, but longer season, a little bit more drawn out. You want some depth there, and I think rather than wasting a whole roster slot on a Fogo, you're going to take a Tarafenko and get all of the things that he brings to the table in defense, offense, and face-off specialty.
The Redwoods and Archers sitting at 4 and 5, the two teams that we have identified as needing a face-off man. The Redwoods hoping that what we just said before is not true, and the Chrome don't select TD. The Archers hoping that the Woods pass, but I can't see that happening. TD to the Woods looks like a done deal, but for the Archers, they can go in a few different directions, obviously. That would be with TD going to the Redwoods. I think if TD is available, the Archers definitely grab him. But those midfielders are all there. If Bates wants to add another pull, maybe Connors if he's still around to play in transition with Scott Ratliff. Again, we have Coach Bates joining us today as well, so don't want to take away from him. But if the Archers, with the Archers here at 5, probably too early to take a shot, I would say, at Kyle Gallagher or one of those other face-off guys. What do you foresee Bates doing here?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's probably going to be a poll here. They'll, I think, have their pick of whether they want Giles or Connors. And really, Jack Keelty, he's shown us tonight playing against Duke. He deserves to be a part of that conversation as well as those top 3 long pole defenders. So I think you're definitely going to see a defender taken. Gallagher, like you said, I think they can grab him in that second, third round kind of gap. Just because face-off is so solid right now in the PLL, there's only a couple teams that are going to try to share it up. So I think we're going to go defense here. The only question is, which one are they going to go? Are they going to go with the transition piece? Are they going to go with a close defender that's going to match up and Keelty? So that one's kind of a crapshoot as well.
A lot of options for Coach Bates there at 5. In terms of really the polls, he could have a choice out of any of those 3. A lot of people have Giles Harris right now as their number 1 poll. I have Connors personally as my top guy. I have Keelty even as my number 2. So we'll see what Coach Bates and these other head coaches do there in terms of defense. But the chance to address the face-off position possibly coming in the second round or the later parts of the draft for the Archers, like the Chrome, or if Ryan Tarafenko is available, again, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The Chaos also have a few picks early in this draft, selecting at 6, 14, and 15. At 6, we could see a Jared Connors possibly available. We might see a Tarafenko even available. The Chaos also going to this draft with 1 draw guy. I'd bank on one of those polls, whether it's Keelty, Giles Harris, possibly still being on the board. And I wouldn't put it past Towers to maybe make a reach and grab another Canadian in a guy like Trey LeClaire, based on who we think could be around. What do you think the mindset for Coach Towers should be?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the joke is Towers is going to go out and get the most Canadian guy he can find. And so I think you could feasibly see a Trey LeClaire there. I think given the fact that they've got that 14 and 15 pick, they'll probably hold off on some of those midfielders that you could see them take, like a Connor Kirst, and really that face-off guy in Gallagher. That's a perfect spot for him at 15 in the second round. So I see a real possible world where Trey LeClaire falls to the Chaos at 6. And I think he falls in perfectly with that slate. I know it's kind of the stereotypical vanilla, there's no fireworks here. He's the guy that fits them best. But I think there's a very possible chance that they are in a good spot to get him.
We had Coach Towers on the show last Tuesday as he looks to wrap up this busy offseason. He also has those 2 picks, as we're saying, at the end of round 2, 14 and 15. We should see that next tier of attackmen possibly still available, whether it's Tierney and Caraway, 1 or 2 of those midfielders that we mentioned before could slip with Jeff Traynor getting in that conversation. Also, you're saying probably going to wait there if midfielders are to fall, probably skipping over that there at pick 6. And as you're saying, we could also see Kyle Gallagher in this conversation if he's still available. The Whipsnakes, they pick 7th in this draft, and with the news of Jared Bernhardt not playing this summer in the PLL, we are expecting him to fall probably out of the first and probably out of the second round. But if he doesn't fall out of either of those 2 rounds, my money would be on the Whipsnakes probably being the ones to grab him, whether it be in that first or second round. Older brother Jake, a midfielder for the back-to-back champs, I think they would be content if they had to wait a year and play without the likely Tewaaraton winner. But Bernhardt should be around at 7. He should be around again there at the end of round 2. I'd be shocked if he wasn't based on what we've learned over the past 2 days. But a lot of options for Coach Stagnita based on what's available to him. Connors, as we're saying, he could still fall. Not a bad backup to one of the best long poles in the game. And Mike Earhart, Giles Harris, or Keelty should be around if adding a pull down low is the plan. And if he wants to add a shooter, Mac O'Keefe shouldn't be touched yet, so he can go that route as well. The Whipsnakes at 7, what do you think they do?
Yeah, the Whips, I mean, take your pick. You're the best team in the league. You don't really have any glaring needs. And you've addressed some of those needs through the previous drafts. So, I haven't heard the idea of Bernhardt going here and they just kind of stick him away for a year, but I think that's a really cool idea. And knowing Stagnita and his savviness with draft picks and with all of the moves that he's made over the last couple of years, man, I'd like to see something like that happen. But if that doesn't happen, I think you could feasibly see a Connors here, or Mac O'Keefe, like you mentioned, if they just want another shooter that I think can play really good off ball with the dodging threats they have in Zed Williams and Matt Rambo. If they're going to be looking to feed a lot more this year, I know Rambo takes a beating and he's a little bit tore up by the end of the year, and Zed plays a lot of the same way, even though he's a little bit bigger. So I think they're going to be looking to get the ball out of their sticks a little bit quicker, just so they don't take that beating. And if you're wanting to do that, who better to get the ball to than a guy that scored hundreds of goals just off ball. So I think Mac O'Keefe could be a good fit if something crazy like the Bernhardt thing doesn't happen, but we'll see what happens.
The Whipsnakes looking to run it back in 2021 and chase that 3rd consecutive championship, while the Cannons are trying to repeat their 2020 success. Obviously, new team, new look, new league. Coach Quirk selecting 8th overall as he was given the last pick in rounds 1 and 3 and the first pick in rounds 2 and 4. Shuffled around a little bit following some trades, but Quirk is at 8 here. This selection will be the 31st player added to his team, making the Cannons the first team to go over that 30-man roster limit ahead of training camp. What do you think Quirk decides to address, and what players should he be targeting here at 8 overall?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. I think he could, if O'Keefe falls to him get that off-ball shooter to go to Lyle. But if that doesn't happen, and like we talked about, he gets taken beforehand, I think you start seeing them dip into the midfield here. I think you start seeing the Doc Akins get talked about, the Connor Kirsts get talked about, Nakai Montgomery, all these guys. I think we're starting to edge into their territory, so you could definitely see one of those guys get taken and kind of open the floodgates for the rest of these teams in the upcoming second round. So this one, I think it really is going to be a decision that he makes midway through the first round. I think they've probably got a couple different options based on who goes where. But I don't even think Coach Quirk is going to know until we're midway through that first round and we kind of see how things shake out.
A few different routes that Coach Quirk can take after trading midfielder Brent Adams. It looks like midfield could be an option, as you mentioned there. Those top middies we've been talking about might all still be there, so he might be able to choose his favorite and, as you're saying, get the ball rolling there on the midfield. There should be one of those top 3 polls as well, so it'll be interesting to see what Coach Quirk does to close out round 1. We're kind of expecting attackman to go early, maybe a poll thrown in there, but probably TD thrown in there as well, maybe a Ryan Terefenko tossed in there early, but then come 8, and then once the Cannons are here at 9, but once the Atlas at 8, Cannons at 9, Atlas again on the clock. We're expecting these midfielders to kind of roll off the board. But the draft is almost here this Monday night at 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. Make sure you are all following Lacrosse Flash across social media, as we will be bringing all of the coverage to you ahead of the draft, during the draft, and following it. We will have mock drafts up on the website throughout the weekend, the college draft special on Monday, and we might be joined by some more special guests. So some very exciting stuff as we get closer and closer to draft night. Noah, appreciate you hopping on, my man, with me today to chat ahead of the draft. Big night, expecting to be a long night, late night, as we return to PLL After Dark. We're definitely hoping for some madness as the draft unfolds. Do you expect any trades to go down here tonight? There was some possibilities. Obviously, the Archers needing a face-off man. They might try to hop the Redwoods. The Redwoods might try to move up to secure TD. Kind of the Water Dogs and Chrome sitting there at 2 and 3. The two teams we're looking at possibly to move out. What are you thinking? You think we see any trades?
Yeah, I think you could definitely see some trades. I know Atlas has been prone these last couple of months to make a trade. They've got so many picks. You think they may trade with someone for a couple later picks to get another one early on and just bolster some of that top tier talent that they could grab in this draft. I think they're going to try to make the most of it. And then the Archers, like you said, they've got that wealth of talent at the attack position that they could move one of those attackmen to another team, and they'd be just as good as a first-round pick for some of these guys. So I think you could see the Archers try to make a move, maybe with a Water Dogs or with a Chrome to try to steal a TD Erlin. But I think you're going to see a little bit of moves. It's just going to be who does it first, and then everyone else is going to play off of that.
We will see as this draft unfolds. We had Coach Copeland on Tuesday's show. He talked a little bit about not really knowing kind of how much of he would get in a return for his second overall pick. Coach Soudan joining me next. He'll talk a little bit, or believe he talks a little bit about having that 3 pick now in the kind of what goes into trading back. We don't know what he would get in return. We're thinking obviously whether it would be the Redwoods or Archers. Let's just say it's the Archers. They would probably get that 5th overall pick. I'd imagine a 2nd-round pick and something else in return, whether it's another later draft pick or a draft pick for next season, maybe a player. We are not sure, and I guess we will find out hopefully at some point. Noah, appreciate you coming on, my man. As always, Chrome head coach Tim Soudan will be joining me next. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, Goal Line Extended on the Lacrosse Flash Podcast Network. We appreciate you all watching or listening from wherever you are as we welcome in our first guest on today's show after leading his team to 3 wins in last season's PLL Championship Series and to the number 2 seed out of the group play. He now holds the 3rd overall selection in the upcoming 2021 PLL College Draft. Joining us now, Chrome head coach Tim Soudan. Coach, welcome to Goal Line Extended. Thank you for taking the time today to chat with us as you get set to select 3rd overall in Monday night's college draft.
For sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, a busy past couple of weeks for you, Coach. I'd imagine, or I'd have to imagine, as you drafted 3 guys back in March in that entry draft, 5 guys then added through the waiver wire over the last few weeks as you get your roster set before this college draft, where, like I said before, you have the number 3 overall selection. Going into this offseason, what was the approach? Obviously, you lose the unofficial 2020 Defensive Rookie of the Tournament, Reese Eddy, to expansion. The runner-up to that award, if there was one, I would say Sam Duggan. He's also taken. And then Jake Pulver, another big addition that you brought in ahead of the championship series last season. He's snatched up by Coach Quirk as well. What was the approach in addressing those losses? Obviously, coming on the defensive end and in the middle of the field, where your team is still quite strong, especially in welcoming back Joel White and then in welcoming Tom Rigney.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it was tough. It was painstaking to take those guys and leave them unprotected and know that it was probably going to be those 3 that ended up getting taken. I think, since that happened, it was just trying to make sure we fill holes and having Thomas Rigney back helped on the decision with Pulver and then, since then in waivers and with the waivers, we got a little deeper at the short stick D midi position with a couple guys that we think might be able to help us. We got Donnie Moss and Haas coming back, so we feel pretty comfortable there. It's just been kind of like trying to fill some holes and fill some needs in the off season here.
bringing in Ryan Bevel and Michael Brown at the short stick defensive midfield position, and then Greg Well at the defense position. White and Rigney also set to make a big impact this season for your team on the defensive end, along with all the other additions that you made. We're looking forward to seeing the roster that you assemble ahead of Week 1. But 2020, the Championship Series tournament, a great showing by your team. As we all know, just 2 wins in 2019, but new coach, new look, new feel, new year. You guys ended up winning the 3 of those 4 group play games before falling to the Redwoods in that first round of elimination. But 2020, not a bad year at all, a stepping stone here for 2021. What did you take away from last year's tournament, especially when you look at this year's schedule and some of those 2 games in 1 weekend situations that you'll find yourself in?
Yeah, I think I think that having the training camp this year, and we're going to be kind of as prepared, and then each week we're going to be able to build on it. It was a little harder to be able to run through stuff live in between games in the championship series, just because you don't want to tax guys too much. So doing things live kind of ended up being in games, but it was nice to get back with the foundation of the Chrome is a bunch of guys I coached in the past, and the amount of leadership we have on the team is incredible. So, I felt really good going into it, and the last minute waivers last year, helped us be as successful as we were. And we're certainly going to miss the guys that we lost, but at the same time, I think it's a situation where every year, especially in expansion, you lose guys, and I've seen that in my past coaching, and you just kind of have to go find guys that fit in your locker room and that are highly athletic and have a really good IQ.
The 2021 season fast approaching. Coach, it all starts for you and your team on June 6th against the Redwoods, the last game of opening weekend. This offseason, though, you released Brett Queener, your backup goalie last season. He was on the Chrome roster in 2019 as well. Started a few games, notably gone to that on-the-field brawl against the Redwoods, but you released him to the player pool back in February, along with a handful of other names to free up some roster space ahead of expansion. So the thought going into this entry draft was that you'd have your eyes on a goalie, and then what we thought all ended up being true. You selected Sean Scannone in the second round, 13th overall. What kind of impact do you expect Scannone to make in the immediate and long term, joining this Chrome team and veteran John Galloway between the pipes? And what do you like about him so much that led you to take him as the first goalie off the board?
Well, first of all, he's a UMass guy, and I'm a UMass guy. So, no, I think his career is kind of spoken for itself. He's, goalie of the year, his senior year in college. He's the last 2 years in the MLL. He's been goalie of the year. He's an incredible stopper. Reminds me a lot of the guy I played with at UMass, Sal Locascio. Just lightning fast hands. Does a great job with the defense. Kind of reunite him with Coach Monty, who coached him a little bit when he was in Dallas. But we took a pretty big gamble on letting him pass and picking up Randy Stotts. But we felt that Galloway was going to be able to get it done another year, and we would kind of address that later. And then when he fell to us, we're jumping up and down. So that worked out perfect. And then one of our guys that we thought we're going to go early was Heacock, and he fell to us in our last pick, and we felt like we won the draft. So I think every coach feels that way. We all view players a little bit differently, but the Scannone pick is, that's going to be a guy that's going to be around with us for a while, playing professional lacrosse. And, I think he has some people, and he's kind of mentioned in that top 3 goalies in the U.S. right now and in the world. So we'll see. It's going to be a big step, and he's going to compete with Coach, John Galloway for time, and never know. We'll see what John's able to do. And I think anytime you push John Galloway and the guy he's always been, and the player and the mindset and his preparation, that's just going to make John better. So we'll see how it all works out. But in the long run, Scannone is going to be a Chrome guy for a while.
John Galloway and Sean Scanone set to compete for some time here on this Chrome roster here at training camp. You also picked up goalie Tate Boyce off the waivers. It looks like he'll compete at camp this summer for your team as well. So filling up the goalie room here ahead of the season. Sticking with the specialists on your team, you also released Hunter Forbes earlier this offseason, leaving Connor Farrell as your lone faceoff man, which isn't the worst thing in the world. He won 62% of his draws at last year's championship series, good for second in the league, but you do sit at third overall in this draft. It doesn't look like the two teams above you will select a faceoff guy. On the flip side, the two teams behind you, some might say, need a faceoff guy. So one of them might be tempted to move up in this draft to get one. You also have a selection in each round of the draft, so the chance to address it later on. And then also at 3, a guy that actually does everything, it seems, should probably be available to you out of Ohio State. We will wait and see what you do with that pick. But what's the plan at the faceoff? It looks like Farrell, the milkman as they call him, is your guy. But do you have your eyes on someone in this draft, maybe still in the player pool? The Cannons, they have 3, and I'd be shocked if they keep them all. So maybe a chance to grab one of them or one of these all-around guys that can serve as your backup and contribute in other areas as well. What's the plan at faceoff?
So, certainly we like the milkman. He's a great guy, and we're gonna have to find somebody to kind of give him reps in practice and whatnot. We'll see what happens at 3. I think there's a player in every position that could fall to us, and we're still in the kind of final thoughts of like where we're going to go with that pick. But I mean, how can you go wrong when you got Sowers and Teat sitting up there, and you got JT Giles Harris and TD Erlin, and I really like the cursed kid. So I think we can't go wrong. We're gonna get a guy that's going to help us and play, every single game for us. So that's outstanding. And being third overall kind of reflects where we finished last year, but this is a good year for us to be third overall. So if there was anything good about that chaos loss is that we're sitting at 3.
Connor Farrell, 62% at last year's tournament in Utah, 57% in his 2 seasons in the PLL, but definitely an opportunity to add a second guy to play alongside him. We will wait and see, Coach, if you do that. Obviously, as you're saying as well, a ton of names in the college draft at whatever position. You could really literally throw a dart at a dartboard kind of on position. At 3, you will have someone available to you that will make an impact probably from day one. So far, though, no midfielders added to your team, but you definitely add a ton of firepower to this offense. With your 5th overall entry draft selection, you got Randy Stotts, another former Rattler and a familiar face to you. And then in the 3rd round, as you mentioned before, Colin Heacock, a guy that can play as a great off-ball option, maybe even out of the box. What do you expect these 2 guys to bring to the table, and how do you plan to utilize them in this offense that was already loaded to begin with and was pretty evident, that was pretty evident in last year's tournament?
Yeah, I think for us, the idea of, at some point we're going to have to get younger here at the offensive end of the field. We got some aging midfielders, but they've been our most productive guys. So we're not really looking at that as being a issue as far as their productivity. We kind of took a look at Colin Heacock and said, okay, we can either play him, play him at attack, or most likely he would fit better in our roster out of the midfield. The guy's an absolute beast, right? He's a big matchup issue, and anytime you throw him out there at the midfield with those other guys, you got to imagine that it's gonna be a game plan on how to stop him. Are you going to put the pull on him, slide him early? When you got Rannigan out there with McIntosh, and then another matchup issue that we have is Jesse King, that when you put him out there with Karate and Randy and Mac, typically gets a short stick and can manage it very well. So that's kind of one of the things that we look at too as you're building a team, is like, is this guy just a really good player, or is he a huge matchup issue that you have to game plan around? And I think Colin Heacock is definitely that guy.
Randy Stotts, and Colin Heacock set to join this Chrome offense in June. Excited to see the impact that they make playing alongside Jordan Wolf, Justin Gutterding, John Radigan, Jordan Magnage, some of the other names that you mentioned as well here on this offense. And maybe someone that you add on Monday night at the top of this draft, a handful of attackmen and midfielders that we have circled, whether it's Sowers, Bernhardt, Teat. You said you like Kirst a lot. Dox Aiken, if you stay put there, I should say, at 3, at least 3 of them should be available to you, possibly even 4. And then also some standout polls as well that have been really showcasing their pro lacrosse promise over the last few weeks, along with their career resumes. They should, I'd imagine, again, 2 or possibly 3 of those top guys available to you. Then we talked before, even Ryan Terefenko out of Ohio State. Going into this college draft, what do you want to address? Where do you think you can get better? A lot of talent will be available. It seems hard, as we were talking before, to go wrong with any of them.
Yeah, I think it comes down to best available. And, you look at the guys in this draft, and there are certainly quite a few guys in this draft that can play for us right away. It just, it's going to be needs-based, basically. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes down next Monday. And when push comes to shove, you try to take generational players, and I think there's 4 or 5 of them that are coming out. And we're sitting pretty. It's been pretty quiet on the trade front as far as like moving back, which was something we looked at, but we're happy sitting where we're at, and I think we're going to get a really good guy at 12 too, that can, compete for a spot to play. But certainly that guy at number 3 is going to probably play for us for a long time.
Yeah, loaded college draft pool here. And with that 3rd overall selection, definitely a chance to make a big splash. Coach, I want to thank you so much for joining me here today and talking a little bit about your team heading into this college draft in the 2021 PLL season. Before I let you go, we got the schedule for the 2021 season released to us last week. I'd imagine you've had it for a while now as you get set for these games. Any games that you're particularly looking forward to?
I'm basically looking forward to the first one. I think we can compete with everybody. It's just, week in, week out, how are the guys going to come out and play, and, what's their thought process for the year. I have kind of a mantra every beginning of every season. The only reason we do this is to win a championship. And, we want to be able to play in the last game of the season and let the chips fall where they may. And I have a bunch of guys that have been there that haven't won one in professional field lacrosse that I think they're starting to feel that their time is due. But there's a lot of teams out there that are really strong, and it's going to be the teams that make the least amount of mistakes at the right time and are able to close those games out.
We have 8 very talented PLL teams. And honestly, as of right now, the 30-player max, obviously, that's going to go down before the season. Then an even smaller roster going into games. You could probably even take those players not even traveling to games, even those players not on team rosters, probably make a whole another like 1 or 2 teams. All the talent that we have in this league, absolutely remarkable. Coach, I want to thank you so much again for joining me, the head coach of the PLL's Chrome Lacrosse Club, looking to get after it here in 2021 and chase that first championship. Coach, thank you again. I hope to talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Our next guest here on Goal Line Extended led his team to a 3-1 round robin record into the semifinals of the 2020 PLL Championship Series, losing to the Chaos, but looking to get over the hump here in 2021 after falling in the playoffs in consecutive seasons, still trying to chase that first championship. But standing between now and PLL Year 3 is the college draft, which Archer's head coach Chris Bates currently has the 5th overall selection in. Coach Bates, welcome to Goal Line Extended. Glad you could join us.
Thanks. Nice to be here. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Coach, 2020 was a pretty good year for your team. You had really high hopes going into it, and for a very good reason. You were one of the early favorites to win the whole thing, and rightly stayed in that conversation as the tournament moved on. Obviously, it moved quickly as games took place over just 2 weeks, but it seemed like the additions you made over the offseason immediately started paying huge dividends. Grant Ament, your first overall selection in the college draft a year ago. He was in the MVP conversation for a little while there, fitting in seamlessly with what you were already doing offensively with Marcus Holman and Will Manny on attack. The unofficial rookie of the tournament, we'll call him, as we deemed him as well last week when he was on this show. Eli Gobrecht, we had him on about 2 weeks ago, asserting himself early on last season as one of the top pulls in this league. And then Christian Mazzone, your other entry draft selection, he made a name for himself, finding the back of the net a few times, playing up and down the field, in the middle of the field. But big year in 2020. The additions you made paid off huge, and now some more set to come join this team here in 2021. But what are you taking from that tournament experience, especially when you look at how this schedule is laid out and some of the weekends that your team will be playing?
No, I mean, the bubble was unique, right? And we're not going to replicate it, obviously, but I think one of the positives was, just the time we all spent together, frankly. Those bonds are formed, and I think it just helped us continue to grow as an organization and a locker room. So, we'll build on it, and I think it's a competitive group, right? I mean, we set the goal very clearly to be the last man standing and have that within our sights. And, like you said, we thought we had a pretty good sort of regular season. And then once playoffs hit, 1-1, and then hit a tough day, frankly, where a lot didn't go well, and we're partially responsible for that, and the chaos are obviously having a big role in that as well. So I think it's a group like I said earlier, we want to retool and find ways to get better, and we think we've addressed some of those things in the off season, and just excited to kind of get through the draft tomorrow. And then have our roster set for training camp, and then start to work through the process of figuring out our 25, figuring out our 19, and then, getting in the mix to gameplay. So it's right around the corner, really.
2021 season is right around the corner. Your additions ahead of the 2020 season could have not been much better, and then those three in particular playing a huge role, Ament, Gobrecht, and Mazzone, especially in those big moments, hoping that these guys that you picked up heading into this season offer the same productivity along with the guys you welcome on Monday night. But let's talk about some of those guys that you brought in this offseason already to join your team. The first coming before the protected rosters were even announced. At the end of February, you sent midfielder Ian McKay to the Chaos in return for attackman Connor Fields, a former Tewaaraton finalist and All-American and 2019 PLL MVP finalist, notably benched in the playoffs last year in the tournament with the Chaos come the playoffs. And the Chaos then went on to win their next 2 games against you in the semifinal, and then to get to the championship game. We all know how that ended. But it seemed like from that point, from the end of the season, that Connor Fields wouldn't be in a Chaos jersey in 2021. That trading period finally opens up here in the offseason, and you managed to bring him in via trade. What was the thought process of adding him to this offense, and in what ways do you expect him to elevate the style of play that your team plays with offensively?
No, we're thrilled to have Connor, wearing an arrow on his jersey, and feel like, he's just one of the best players in the world. But we also wanted to make sure it was a good fit, right? I think Connor was ready for a new start. I think he's excited to play for us and frankly with us, right? It's a seasoned group, obviously led by Tom up top at the midfield, and Will and Marcus just sort of as our core attackmen, and then with Grant coming on, only having a few weeks, it'll be nice to kind of get this group to gel. But Connor specifically does everything well. And I think you'll see hopefully more of that, this summer. I think his ability to feed is really unparalleled. We love the way he plays off ball. He's just a great cutter, a great finisher. He's great in the 2-man game, which, is a staple for us. So I think our guys are excited to play with him just because he shares the ball. He doesn't always need it. And when he gets it, he can put it at the back of the net. I mean, he's kind of that triple threat. So, he's going to fit in great. I feel pretty confident.
Connor Fields set to join a long list of talent on this offense, as you said, from veterans like Manny and Holman. Ament broke out in his rookie campaign, a feeder, really natural feeder. He said the other day he was very excited to play with Fields. And then we know, as you said as well, very well what Captain America Tom Schreiber can do. So getting your offense set here ahead of Monday's draft. And in the entry draft and ensuing days, you add to that list of offensive talent. Ryan McNamara selected in round 2 and Nate Solomon added through waivers. How do you expect these guys to fit in offensively as you look to fill the void left by Josh Courier as he was selected in expansion?
No, those two guys have different skill sets. I watched a lot of film, obviously, and Ryan was a guy who's gotten a long pole for his years in the MLL. Watched him in college. Like he's a gamer, right? I mean, he stretches the field a little bit. He's a little bit more of a north-south dodger, which we don't have a lot of. Shoots at both hands. Can dodge east-west too. So he's going to be excited to have a short stick. Probably more times than not. There's just some creativity that allows. There's some freedom that allows. I think he'll also work in some two-man opportunities with Tom, but just gives us kind of a two-handed guy, a right-handed guy as well that can help stretch the field and create some offense. And Nate is somebody that we just felt like could really give us something that we don't have. He's got good feet. He's tough around the goal line extended. He puts the ball in the back of the net. He knows how to play. When you play at Syracuse, there's always 5 other really good players around you. So, he knows his moments, I think, but then also doesn't need the ball constantly. So, for us and for me as an offensive coordinator, you want to find guys that gel and can fit in a system, play with other guys, take advantage of their opportunities, and then also create, some for other guys. So, I feel like he gives us some depth and some flexibility within our roster.
Solomon absolutely offering you flexibility. And then when you think about maybe your first 6, Holman, Manny, Ament, Schreiber, McNamara, probably maybe a Christian Mazzone, Connor Fields, who do you pull in that situation? Ryan McNamara definitely probably going to get a lot of short stick opportunities. You address the offensive side of the ball pre-entry draft and in the early stages of the offseason. You also made a point to address the defensive end, stating that you wanted to get bigger and stronger and tougher down low to be able to match up with those Matt Rambo, Zed Williams type matchups. And you were able to do just that, adding one of the toughest defensemen in the game in Graham Hossack with the 2nd overall pick of the entry draft. And then later in that draft, Warren Jeffrey selected to join Eli Gobrecht and Matt McMahon. How do you and Coach Resch plan to work them into what you have going on defensively?
Well, like you say, I mean, I think, we addressed some things where we felt like we could just get better in terms of one-on-one matchups and being a little bit more physical. Graham is I think going to be, just a staple down there, right? I mean, he's a no BS kind of player. He's got some edge to him. He's got good feet. He's played at a high level. He's played at championship caliber. So we just feel like we're going to be really happy with having him as an anchor down there. And I tell a story that, at pick 18 for the entry draft when Warren was still there, we're like, we got to take him. We didn't think going in, that he would last that long, frankly. And that's a credit to Ryan McNamara, who we just obviously believed in to pick him at 12 or 13, wherever we got him, or 10. But then with Warren being there, we just kind of reconfigured our plans a little bit and just said, here's another, just tough physical player that can body up at goal line extended, can give you some depth, can give us a little more flexibility with where we might move some guys around. But, in terms of our top 5 guys, and Jackson Place comes back as well. Jack Rapine played last year. We just feel like we've got some tools to work with. So I think Coach Resch is pleased. And then, bringing in Latrell Harris at short stick and long stick can also gives us some options. And obviously we bring back Moose and Dom at short stick. So we feel good there. We've got to be physical. It's a matchup league and we want to win matchups and not have to slide as much as maybe we did last year. And hopefully that can help us.
Adding Hossack and Jeffrey to bulk up and add some depth down low in the entry draft. And also, as you mentioned, in the waiver wire, another very talented player that you added in the middle of the field. He can play with a pull and a short stick. Latrell Harris, a fan favorite of a lot of the guys here at Flash, getting drafted in the NLL by the Toronto Rock in the 2nd round. of the 2016 draft at just 18 years old, now 23. It still seems like he's young and in his prime. We'll see come training camp time and the start of the season if that's true. But bringing in a guy like him, as you said, to work with Mark McNeil, to work with Dominique Alexander, what's the thought in bringing him in and using his entire skill set?
Well, it remains to be seen. The 19-person travel roster gives us, some challenges that we got to work through. But at the end of the day, like you say, he's a puppy to some degree, right? He's been around for a little bit, but he's still young. And again, has played at a high level. If you go back and watch the U.S.-Canada games from the World Games a few years back, Latrell's in there pretty consistently. So playing at that level, knowing, what it means to compete, playing in the NLL, you don't hide there, right? I mean, that's you got to be a man. So we feel like that edge and that athleticism are really going to help us. The fact that he can play shorty and long pole, we may take advantage of that at some point. So again, we're not totally there yet, but again, some flexibility, some toughness. Tyler Fisher retired. We've been a team that has played 3 short sticks in the past. We don't typically have we just don't have a lot of two-way guys, pure two-way guys. So it gives us some needed depth there and athleticism and toughness.
Harris, now one of a few professional Canadian box players, getting a chance to showcase their talent in the PLL and NLL standout over his first few seasons in Toronto. We'll see how he adjusts in his first season with the Archers. Playing with Scott Ratliff have given that opportunity. Dominique Alexander and Mark McNeil, as I said before, also in that defensive midfield and transition game. And a guy that won't be on your defensive end this season, Mike Simon. You released him to the player pool following the entry draft to create some space on your roster last year in what I believe was our first of 2 conversations ahead of the championship series. You talked very highly of Mike, the player and leader that he is on and off the field, a 6-time champion of pro lacrosse, and a tough decision for you, I'd imagine, to let him go. What will you miss most about having him out there on the field and in the locker room for your team?
Well, just an outstanding leader first and foremost, a really good player. You're not involved in that many championship victories, hoisting that many trophies without being made of the right stuff. So, it's the hardest part. I knew coming into this, job as a professional coach that managing the roster and not playing guys on certain games. Everybody's a champion. Everybody's got so much talent. So game day rosters and making those decisions is really hard. And then having to let guys go is not easy as well. So, having Tony Resch on staff with me is a real benefit, with his experience in the NLL and just at a very high level. So he's helped me sort of, just handle those situations, and you just can only deal straight with guys and be honest and do what's right that you believe, for your roster and for your organization. So, tough to see Tree go, but I feel very blessed to have had the opportunity to bring him in the first place and had the opportunity to have him on our team.
Simon released to the player pool in late March along with Davey Amala, and then Tyler Fisher, as you mentioned before, retired ahead of the season. The other notable names you lost this offseason. But freeing up some space to make some more waiver claims, you went out and picked up another goalie in the waivers to bring with you to camp. Nick Wishuda out of Vermont. He was the Denver Outlaws, or with the Denver Outlaws, I should say, in 2020 at the MLL bubble. He'll join Adam Gittleman and Drew Adams, the goalie tandem that you have deployed here over the past 2 seasons. What's the plan going into this year? Is the 2-goalie system staying around, or are you hoping that one of these guys can come in and try to take this job here at camp?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd prefer not to play 2 necessarily, which just means that one guy's won it and he's the clear guy. Time will tell, right? I mean, we're certainly not going in with any preconceived notions. The tandem thing has worked relatively well. So we'll see. Bringing in Nick gives us some depth, gives us some youth. Brian Kavanaugh, our assistant coach, and former goalie coach Nick at Vermont, and has really just spoke so highly of him. So we think there's a lot of upside there. Nick's a big kid. He's got real quick hands. By his own admission, in the MLL bubble, didn't play to his potential. So we feel like he's a guy that can really really develop and give some competition. But it's going to be best man wins, right? I don't care how old you're. We're loyal as to the last performance, and that's just the meritocracy of pro sports. So. We'll see how it goes in training camp, but thrilled to bring him in and hopefully see him grow and develop with us.
Definitely excited to see what Wishuda can bring to the field. And then obviously you told me something very similar last year. Obviously, if someone is able to take that job, then obviously they would get the job in goal. But you went back to that tandem system last year in the tournament. So we will see what you do this summer. Could we see the end of the two goalie system, or is it here to stay? Here to stay. We'll see week one as the Archers open their season against the Atlas on Saturday night, June 5th. In Boston. Then, Coach, we've been talking this entire time about the strengths of your team, really up and down the roster. You have some incredible talent all over, but I think if I had to call out one area of concern, it would be regarding your face-off situation. Bones Kelly, Stephen Kelly, protected ahead of expansion, just like last offseason. But unlike last offseason, Brendan Fowler is taken in expansion as one of the 3 draw guys selected. We're a few days ahead of this college draft. There is what some people are calling a generational player at the position, but there might be some obstacles in terms of getting him. You select after the Redwoods, who also seem to be in the market for a face-off guy, and then still a few other names to keep an eye on towards the end of the draft that you could also bring in. The Cannons probably won't keep all 3 of those guys, so one of them could become available to you. But what's the plan going into these next couple of days in addressing and trying to strengthen the face-off position?
No, it's a good question, and you know, I appreciate the dialogue around it. We have a lot of faith in Stephen Kelly. He's been a pro's pro and has done very well. We have enlisted sort of the two-headed approach there too. Whether or not we can do that going forward remains to be seen. So the draft has TD's obviously a known. There are some other guys that may be options. So we're going to bring in another guy, maybe 2 other guys. We'll see, right? I mean, just to provide competition and depth, and it's kind of like you say, the one area where you're going to bring in somebody else. You're not just going to go into a season with one, and just working through the process to see where we're slotted draft wise. I'm not sure there's going to be a trade to get us in a position to get some guys or not, and then you just got to sort of let the picks play out, and that's that's what keeps me up at night, and a couple more gray hairs and all that. But we're confident in Steven, and then like everywhere else on the roster, we feel like through the MLL and the entry draft stuff and through college, we're gonna throw competition at all of our guys without a doubt.
Absolutely. And a very, very late night we're expecting to have on Monday night, as that draft starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. But we'll see what you do in that draft. Bones Kelly, 49% at last year's tournament. And he also has posted that same clip over his 2 seasons in the league. If not addressing the draft, expect Coach Bates to have it addressed before Friday's waiver window closes. Coach, you sit at 5th overall, as we've been talking about. A ton of talent going to be available to you in the middle of the first round. What's the thought process right now with this pick? There could be some stud attackmen and some polls available. That doesn't really seem like the route you'd be going based on your other offseason moves, but we talked the face-off before. You'd probably need to make a move to make that happen. You're saying probably not in the works, but we will see. What's the plan going into Monday night?
It's a good question. We're still not there, frankly, and even as we're having this talk and interview in the background, I'm seeing the text go from my staff with ideas, and I'm trying not to get distracted. But we're in the middle. It's a fun process, right? It's stressful because you want to do the right thing. I try to go to great lengths to really learn about the character of guys and really how important lacrosse is to them beyond college. So what you see on Saturdays now, you got to make sure that's a goal for guys, come a month from now when the PLL stuff starts. So, guys get jobs and the like, but, we've talked to a lot of college coaches. We've narrowed, for each of our picks, I think we narrowed the pool of who we think might be available. It's cliche to say the best available because, it's hard to say no to some guys that are going to be available to you, but you do have to sort of have some discipline in terms of your roster. We've upset the apple cart a decent amount, with our offseason moves, and we just got to figure out what's going to complement, challenge, and improve where we are. So that's all I'm telling you right now. That's all I know.
A lot of great talent available, whether it's attack, midfield, defense, LSM, obviously Jared Connors being there, face-off. A lot of talent available in this draft. Very excited to see who you select there at 5th overall, and then with your other 3 selections in this draft. Coach, I want to thank you so much again for joining me, the head coach of the PLL's Archers Lacrosse Club. Looking for a different result, I should say, here in the 2021 season as the Archers chase that first championship. Coach, Thank you again. I hope to talk to you soon. And joining me next here on GLE is Noah Lance to look ahead to this weekend in college lacrosse. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
You're watching Goal Line Extended, presented by Lacrosse Flash.
Welcome back to GLE. Ryan Hulsebos, Liam Kelly is with me as well, not Noah Lands. I made that mistake there at the end of Coach Bates' interview, but obviously with Coach Bates looking ahead to the PLL College Draft on Monday night, and then also looking ahead to our PLL College Draft special on Monday. But before that, we have another exciting weekend of college lacrosse action, headlined by a CBS Sports Network noon broadcast of Army and Navy, the number 10 and number 19 ranked teams in the country, an important Patriot League matchup and the biggest of the weekend as we approach the end of the regular season. We'll also see number 6 Lehigh host Bucknell. Loyola will head to Lafayette. So a big weekend for those 4 teams in particular as they approach the Patriot League tournament that recently reinstated the quarterfinal round. So allowing more teams into the tournament. We should see these 4 battle it out come the end of it. But a big weekend here. First, Army and Navy, always a classic in whatever sport it is, and we're hoping for another great one here on Saturday, CBS Sports Network at noon Eastern. But the 2 big games this weekend in the ACC, Syracuse heading to Virginia after the indefinite suspension of attackman Chase Scanlon, and Notre Dame will head to North Carolina and play on Sunday. That following their game last night with Duke. This show being uploaded on a Friday, but we are recording this Thursday afternoon, so we don't have a score for that game. But looking ahead to these matchups, let's start, Liam, with Notre Dame and North Carolina. Regardless of what happens against Duke, this is a game that has some serious conference implications here at the top of the ACC. Notre Dame with their dominant defense, led by college draft prospect Jack Keelty, who I have as the top defenseman here in this draft. North Carolina coming off their 21-goal showing a week ago in the Dome, trying to get hot here to finish off the regular season. No ACC tournament this year as of right now, so a big game in terms of seeding ahead of the NCAA championship. What are you looking forward to in this one?
Yeah, normally in one of these games, obviously Notre Dame has the midweek game against Duke. I would look at travel, but because Notre Dame is in Durham, then they're just going to be staying there. There's going to be no weary legs getting off the bus. I would think that UNC might have a bit more prep, but like we've seen, Notre Dame's been in all of their ACC games. They're real competitive all the way down the stretch. Like you said, Keelty has been a stud all year on D. Really, I think it's going to be just a competitive down to the wire game. UNC will be a bit more rested, but at the same time, you know, with the way we've seen these ACC games, it can go either way.
North Carolina and Notre Dame set for Sunday afternoon. UNC trying to get locked in ahead of their season finale with Duke next week. Expecting that one to be really exciting as well. We also have Syracuse and Virginia on Saturday afternoon. Syracuse in their first game without Chase Scanlon, but that doesn't seem to be the biggest on-the-field issue for this Cuse team. Their struggles this season coming particularly on the defensive end. But how do they turn this thing around, flirting with 500 as they had on the road in their final 2 weeks? This one against the number 5 team in the country, Virginia, who they beat earlier this season.
Well, I think that Cuse, like you just mentioned, they did win that first game. If Drake Porter has another 60% save day, then that's always going to put you in a good spot. They've got a good offense. They've got guys that can make plays everywhere. They got, you know, dearth. Their defense has been the question mark, but I kind of see Virginia trending up and Syracuse trending down. Virginia is going to be coming off a Utah win and that 1-goal loss to Duke, and then Cuse, like you said, is coming off that UNC thrashing. So it's going to be a bit tough. In that first matchup, we also saw Petey LaSala go for 37% at the stripe, which is kind of his one anomaly on the year. So if he has a day like that, then Cuse is in it. But I don't expect whatsoever this to be a game that is, you know, leaning in Cuse's favor. I think this is a bit of a tough matchup for them. Like you said, coming off the Scanlon news, coming off the UNC game. It's just, kind of the end of their season. If they get in, it's going to be tough to justify it because they'll be the 5th seed in the ACC for their tournament. But, that might be their reason to kind of get it going right as this gets down to the wire for the end of the season and needing an at-large kind of resume. So it could go one of two ways.
Especially with no ACC tournament. This is really the last chance to showcase what you got here before, obviously, they pick these 16 teams, obviously your conference champions and champions, and then those at-large bids. But, yeah, for Virginia, P.D. LaSala, I mean, he's been phenomenal. One of the best face-off men in college lacrosse this season. Really, that one game early in the season against Syracuse was his one anomaly, as you said. So trying to get back on track here. Drake Porter defensively, he's been pretty good this season. Just the defense in front of him has struggled pretty mightily against, especially in the last couple weeks in ACC play. Another big game as the ACC season wraps up. Virginia and Syracuse both coming in off conference losses, trying to get back on track. And the Big Ten season stayed on track. They said at the start that it would be conference only. They started with 5 games, would later expand it an additional 5 while keeping that conference only schedule. Final regular season games this weekend ahead of the conference tournament, which each team does qualify for, with the top 2 seeds getting a bye through the first round. The top team, I should say, in the country, not top teams, Maryland, they will head to Johns Hopkins. Ohio State will look to Syracuse, will look to secure the 3 seed and pad its resume ahead of the NCAA tournament as they host Penn State. Ohio State, another team like Syracuse that needs a good resume here, trying to get an at-large bid if they can't win their conference. And Rutgers, the number 8 team in the country, they host Michigan on Sunday at noon Eastern. But Maryland and Hopkins at Homewood, always an iconic game, has included some of the legends of the sport. Maryland hoping to get a tune-up in before awaiting who gets out of the first round, but the number 1 team in the country, and we get a chance to see Jared Bernhardt for the final time ahead of Monday night's draft. What are you looking forward to in this one?
I think it's going to be that kind of solidifying point of Jared Bernhardt going first overall. I think if he wants to be that guy, if he wants to overtake Sowers and Teat, then he's got to finish out this with like an 8 or 9 point game. But his resume is flawless at this point. They're 9-0. They already clinched Big Ten, so we know that that's all said and done for the regular season. So at this point, it's going to be the next thing I'd be excited for is if Hopkins, has one of those statement Homewood games. They are on a 5-game skid. They lost to everybody consecutively, so it's a tough place to be, especially with a new coach, new year, coming into this from a COVID shortened season. It just hasn't been their year. They've got some big names, big pieces, but they haven't had that big production that we've seen from them historically. So if they can turn it into one of those, big games at home, then maybe we'll get something out of it. But it's just going to be number 1 team in the country rolling, one of the number 1 players in the country rolling, and just more of the same.
Very excited to see Jared Bernhardt. It won't be his final game at Maryland, but his final game here before that draft. Very excited to see what him and that Maryland team can do through both tournaments, the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament. Obviously, expecting them to kind of win that Big Ten tournament and then move on to that NCAA, where obviously they are one of the best teams. But Big Ten season wrapping up its regular season conference tournament to come on Monday. We will know those first round matchups, exciting stuff as we near playoff time. Another notable team finishing their regular season this weekend, the Denver Pioneers. They host St. John's, hoping to rebound after their 3rd loss of the season to Georgetown last week. Georgetown hosts Providence. Georgetown a half game ahead of Denver in the Big East standings. We also have some America East action this weekend as the number 15 ranked team in the country, Stony Brook, hosts UMBC, a huge game in terms of the America East standings. Stony Brook currently a game ahead, and Vermont will head to Binghamton. Vermont also up there at the top of the America East standings. And in the CAA, Towson will host Delaware, number 13, according to the Inside Lacrosse media poll, and Hofstra will head to Drexel. Those 4 teams, including UMass, who will be playing a defeated Fairfield this weekend at the top of the CAA and vying for a position with 2 weeks to go in their regular season. Exciting stuff as we wrap up the 2021 College Lacrosse regular season. And 2 more games here to keep on your radar as 2 Ivy League teams get back in action. Dartmouth will host Division III powerhouse Tufts. That's on Sunday at 3 Eastern. And tonight at 6:30, Penn will head to Cabrini as they both get their season started. Liam, it's not every day that we get to see a matchup between a D1 and a D3 team. Sunday will be one of those days, and we're going to get 2 matchups thanks to Dartmouth and the Ivy League and Tufts in the NESCAC.
Yeah, so anytime that the Ivies can get playing, you get these cross-division games, that's good for lacrosse. We didn't expect to see any Ivies playing this year. The fact that, Penn's picking up a game, Dartmouth's picking up a game, it doesn't matter how these games go. It doesn't matter how these teams play because they really haven't been practicing. They really haven't. I mean, they might have, but it's not everybody. It's just good exposure. It's good chance to let people know that, hey, this is a thing. We're moving in the right direction. It could be a blowout one way or the other. And at the end of the day, as long as people know that there's progress moving forward, that's the biggest deal. I do say that as a preface to what might happen in this Tufts game. They've played 3 games. They played, I think they're only 2-0 on paper. They had a postponed game and they filled it with a slot on a Sunday. But Tufts has scored no less than 24 goals a game, which is absurd. And we know that they're powerful. We know that they can crush anybody on any given day. And even for an Ivy team that historically is a strong conference, it might not be the best situation for them not having had a season. But like I said, it doesn't matter. They're getting to play, and that's important. And then Cabrini and Penn, same kind of deal. You have a historically good team in Penn. You have, Ivy experience, Ivy coaching, Ivy facilities, Ivy prep. But at the end of the day, Cabrini's 8-1, and they've only lost to Salisbury. So having said all that, this is just good. We're just happy about it. And I'm stoked to see that these games are going up. So big positives.
Especially regarding the Tufts game. I mean, Tufts is undefeated this season. I believe they're 3-0. And I think they have a game Friday and then Saturday, or if this game is Sunday, they have a game the day before this game with Dartmouth. But they are absolutely crushing teams. 29, 24, and 27 goals scored in those 3 games that I saw. So we'll see what one of these Ivy League defenses can do this weekend up against Tufts. Marist, also speaking of getting back to action, Marist got to play one of their first games of the season, their first game in a couple of weeks. Handful of postponements have derailed their regular season here, but Marist able to get back into action. What did you like there from their game on Tuesday?
I had them as being, the top team in that MAC division. So the fact that they had so many weeks off and, their coaches are giving them a message of like, hey, we're going to proceed as if it's going to happen, but it might not happen. The fact that they come out, they beat a team who is in the tourney at this point in Quinnipiac. I think they're 3rd right now in MAC standings. And they come out, Marist gets the win. It's just back to business. They had number 3 spot on SportsCenter's top 10. They got everybody rolling. They're going to be fired up, and they're going to be contenders as long as they can squeeze enough games into their season to finish it off. It's exciting.
Mayor's trying to get right and back involved in their conference ahead of their conference tournaments. Liam, I want to thank you so much for coming on with another big weekend of college lacrosse coming up. We'll be back next Friday to look back at the weekend's games and look ahead to next weekend's games as we'll stick to the PLL with our draft special on Monday. I want to thank you all for watching and or listening to today's show. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube as well as on whatever podcast platform that you use. Search up Goal Line Extended and you should be able to find it. You can also head on over to the Lacrosse Flash website, lacrosseflash.com. All of our podcasts are there as well as stories and articles covering all the latest news. You can also follow Goal Line Extended on Instagram and Twitter at GL Extended. All of the links that you will need will be in the description of the video or podcast that you are viewing or listening to right now. We will be back on Monday with our college draft special as we await Ben Rubier's first overall selection. Make sure to follow and subscribe so that you do not miss it. I hope you all have an incredible weekend, and we will see you on Monday.
show on Twitter and Instagram at GL Extended, and subscribe to the show on any of your favorite podcast outlets. You can find Lacrosse Flash on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and online at lacrosseflash.com.